Okay.
Just got the audio.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'll officially start in just a minute, but I wanted Karen to know we do have the printed out stuff that you just sent, so everybody's having a chance to have it. So when you get ready to go over it, we do have the material. And I know that Allison talked to you about it earlier, so we are in business.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, there's no votes. Of course we are. There were no votes. No votes. Of course.
Could you swim?
Swim? Yeah. No, thanks.
All right. Okay, you guys ready? I'll go ahead and start. Sure. All right. Like to officially call to order the planning board session for Wednesday, January 10th. The first item on the agenda is the Town of New Shoreham and the Block Island Water Company, Plat 9, Lot 12, fire number 426, Sands Pond Lane. Development plan review for an application by the Block Island Water District for a special use permit under sections 113A, B1 and a variance from 306C for a two-phase project at the water treatment site. The first phase will be the addition of a water storage tank that will store 256,000 gallons of treated water. And the second phase involves the placement of a new reverse osmosis unit in the lower level of the west side of the building and adding a dormer to the second floor. The advisory to the zoning board, and we will review the stuff and act on waivers and set the public hearing date for February. Okay, please come and talk to us, John.
I'm John Bernig, Block Island Water or New Shoreham Water District Superintendent. You guys have all the stuff in front of you, I believe. So this is it's really a three-phase project, but only two phases kind of come to zoning and planning because of the heights of the tank and a change to the current building, even though we're not changing our footprint at all. It's really about the biggest change would be a tank, another tank on the water company lot. So it's really a three-phase project, which is, and I'll take you from the beginning, it's development of a new well field because that's our source water. It's the treatment, which is how we treat our brackish water through reverse osmosis. And then obviously from there, the water goes into the water storage tanks. So to complete our water capacity expansion project, it requires all three of these phases of the project. You guys are seeing these two. Zoning and planning is seeing these two. On the height of the tank, if you guys want to talk about tank heights and all that, because of hydraulics, they have to be the same height as the other tanks that are on the lot. Otherwise, I mean, you can have like all sorts of fun valves and altitude valves, but essentially water will seek the same level. They're all connected at the bottom with the same pipe, and we generally like to keep a simple system. So if you built it higher or lower, one would overflow and everything else unless you had some specialty valves. So we're keeping it simple, connected at the bottom, and all of the heights will be the same on the top, even though, as you see on the plans, one steps down, and that's because we have a hill. And so it is technically from the base to the top, it is higher, but when you look at it, it'll be the same height as the other tanks. The building modifications are just really adding a dormer. It's not adding any footprint to the building. To add a second floor, we're running out of space as it is right now, and we're kind of stuffed to the gills up there. It's a pretty small facility. And so we're going upstairs. So, because the current area where there's storage and everything is going to be all treatment and it's going to change the use. So we're going up a level, putting some dormers in. So we have creating some space for ourselves. So, I mean, on a larger picture, this is, and what we talked about last night with the Conservation Commission a little bit is we're creating more water on the island. We're adding water capacity, which is a bigger conversation for a planning board. I did come here. It was during COVID. We were all on Zoom, I think, about 3 years ago, and we talked about this project in concept. Like, hey, we're rounding the end of our infrastructure, and demand and supply are coming very close, and we're talking about doing a capacity expansion project. I believe it was were you the only member now on that? Maybe Socha was there.
Socha and Mary.
Socha and Mary was there. Okay.
Yes, all three of us were on.
So, on a larger scale, beyond heights of tanks and buildings and footprints and lot coverages and all that, I feel like it can't be ignored that we, on a planning end, we are making more water available to the community, which is something that I think needs to be said here, beyond the physical structures that are actually being built. So, anyway, that's what I have to say to begin with. If you guys want to ask questions, that's great.
I'm sure we will ask questions. You've already answered mine on the
Okay.
regarding the heights of the tank. So that was my biggest question. Socha,
Just in
do the microphone, please.
just in general, other than the height, are there any variances that you will be requesting from the zoning board?
And yes, there is variance and special use permits, because we're going to go over our lot coverage, I believe, by some. And I wish Jen was here, because Jen's like the wizard at all this stuff, and we've been doing this all together. So yeah. So
yeah, it says here 11.5.
yeah. So lot coverage and height are the two variance and special use permits that we're going through for zoning. So we're in the zoning process as well. Yeah.
I have no comment.
Okay.
No concerns.
Okay, good. Chris, questions?
No, we need water.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all agree on that. There's no argument there.
Yeah. And
Oh, wait a minute, no.
Yeah,
Maybe
well,
not quite that.
and we did speak about this last night a little bit. We're creating an allocation system that's going to try to reserve water for existing businesses and residents within the water district that are not on town water, but might require our water over the next 10 years. There's a lot of failing wells.
Your application, that's a very.
There's
good
a
point.
lot of failing wells. A lot of the wells that were drilled are about 40 years old, and we've had a number of residents and businesses fail already. So we're going to try to create a system. And like I said last night, my worst fear is that someone buys 95,000 gallons over 100,000 we're making available on the first day. And we're going to create an allocation system or a water allotment system that tries to reserve some water for the existing buildings. And if it's the Harborside, the National, the Spring House, the Harborside's gone, but it'll be rebuilt. The three, cornerstones of our community and have been for a long time around wells. And I'm assuming over the next handful of years that they're older wells, and they're going to require our water at some point in time. There's also tons of residents as well, and older homes and everything that have been here for quite some time. It's not going to be a perfect system, but that's our goal, is to create some system. The other thing is reserving water for affordable housing projects and other public projects that are going to be coming up over the next 10 years. So we're going to try to do our best to reserve water for public projects and existing buildings. That's the goal. And there will be water available for new development.
I was going to say,
Yes.
what
Yes.
about new development?
Yes, we're not going to say no new development, but there'll be different buckets of water that we're going to hold. And I spoke about this last night at the Conservation Commission. Currently, the way it's set up is that 75% of the water is for private interest, 25% is for public interest. There was a flaw in this system where it was recalculated every year. So if the private interest purchased all the private water, then the pie just got smaller for public interest, which was, we're going to hold the 25%. We're making 100,000 gallons available. We're holding 25,000 for public interest now. That's not going to be recalculated every year, because basically what happened is that the pie just got smaller and smaller over the years. So we're not going to recalculate this every year, so that when a affordable housing project comes up like it did, and we're saying, well, you have to wait for us. And I think the timing is going to work out with that project, but we want to be able to be ready for that and not say, oh, we have to do another expansion again for this great community project that all of us would like to see. So that's our goal over the next years. We've talked about it in meetings, and we've agreed in concept that this is how we're going to move forward with the expansion water, essentially, that we're making available. So, and I feel like that's good to mention here in a
Yes.
planning meeting. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Bill, questions? Okay, Mary?
Oh, I just love being in front of so many questions.
Yeah.
But I would appreciate what you bring to us. It's really, really helpful. And yeah, I remember in the past when businesses needed more water than you could provide. So I get this in concept. And I too was curious about the height. It's 3 times the height of the 2 existing ones. Is that right? Like,
3 times. It's,
other ones are-
oh, you're looking at mean sea level. One's mean sea level. Yeah, it's 5. It's 5 from the base to the, it's 5 more feet. It's an extra, it's like they're bolted steel tanks. So they come in like sections. So it's one more 5-foot section. Yeah.
And the third one,
You're reading difference. We wanted to put the mean sea level on that plan so that you guys knew that it was all the same above sea level versus the actual foundation to top measurement. So we included both of those, and maybe you're just looking at
Okay.
the wrong number. Yeah. See, of course, it confused you after we.
I was looking in your chart.
Which one?
It was in the packet that we've got.
Which document?
I'm just looking now.
Okay.
The zoning board review of the application.
Setting application. What's the second page look like? I think I deleted that one. Yeah, okay. Variance for application for variance for special use permit. Yeah, yep.
Were the heights in there?
That's
Tank 1, tank 2, tank 3. I see now, tank 1, tank 2 is 34, tank 3 is 44.
yes.
Right.
I think it was 10.
Thank you.
Okay,
And I just had some general questions.
sure. Go ahead.
And I know we can talk about this as a public hearing, but general questions about, I'm forever perplexed about the levels of the, and I love maybe described it in here, the levels of water that you tap into with the well number 1, well number 2, well number 3. I think it's in the same packet. And that's in that first layer of available water. You said that's not, you can't source enough raw water from there, right? From those first few wells, because they're shallow, first tier.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about, I should have brought my jars again. I brought props to the Conservation Commission because damn, I should have brought them.
You can bring them next month.
I can bring them next time. What I brought in, it was just a nice kind of show and tell to what's going on when we drill a well. So I brought a few samples of the actual material that we go through as the well driller goes down into the different formations that the glaciers left here. And you know, it's neat to touch and feel, but basically, you know, you go down and eventually you kind of hit a clay layer, and then below that clay layer, you know, and it's all different everywhere. But in this instance and around us, it was about 180 so feet, you hit this nice water bearing formation. And it's like loose, you know, not gravel, but you know, it's small pieces, large pieces of sand, small gravel that water would move through. And that's your water bearing formation that my well's in, your well's in on the west side. You're, you know, if you're not on town water, that's generally where your well would be. Now, And every well driller who's drilled these deeper wells for us, they say we usually stop here. And because that's where you have fresh water and they're happy, they're losing water and they're happy. So we say that's not the contract, keep on going. And so they go through, and this is the real kind of neat part about it. When you see, it's a very hard pan clay. I mean, it looks like you can almost pot with it. It's just so thick. You could hold the jar upside down, it wouldn't come out. And what we know about that is that waters doesn't readily go through that very easily or extremely slowly. And then below that, we run and we go through, depending on where it is, anywhere between 10, 20 feet of that clay, and it's very hard to drill through. And on the bottom of it, you end up in another nice water-bearing formation. And what we find in between these two, and we do this when we do pump tests. So we have shallow wells, like residential wells, also at the water company. They're backups, and they're older wells, but we use them as backups, emergency backups. So when we did our pump tests for new wells or replacement wells, we'll pump that well, measure the well that we're actually testing, the deeper well, and we'll measure the levels of the upper well. And we just want to do that to confirm we aren't affecting, and the Kona depression isn't falling into that. And so we like to continually prove that we aren't affecting that freshwater lens, I'll call it. And, we all know we're designated by the EPA as a sole source aquifer. We're not really in that aquifer, that freshwater sole source. We're going deeper than that into this kind of very minerally saltier. And I brought in a sample of kind of our worst well, and I had everyone smell it. It's terrible. This isn't something you're drinking. It has to go through a intensive treatment process to become potable. So, and I said, I can't take credit for it. And the people before me, I inherited this system, but the people before me were smart. We realized that we're running Sands Pond dry. We probably shouldn't draw from these shallow wells because we're probably going to start drying up all the wells around us because we're drawing a lot of water. So they were very smart and looked at, hey, can we treat the brackish water below it? And it's worked out very well for the island, where we don't feel like we're taking this very precious freshwater source on top and we're going below that. And then and I like to say it again and again. And Keith is here because Keith said, I don't think you can say this enough when we've been through town council meetings. I don't think you can say this enough that we're treating this non-potable, brackish, irony. If you sit out this stuff, those seeps that come out of the bluffs that are like
Yes.
bright, they turn bright red. That's what this stuff looks like. If you if you sit it out and oxidize a little bit, that's what it starts looking like. So anyway, I'm glad you brought that up. Our goal with our new wells, even though this isn't on here, and we will do this, there's a residential well on the property. We will be measuring the wells around there when we do our pump test to ensure that we won't be pumping down the aquifer in the residents nearby.
Since
So-
I'm one of the residents nearby, I'm happy to
Yes.
hear that.
Yes. Well, there's a newer well, residential well on the property. So we will be measuring that and making sure that when we're pulling 100 gallons a minute, that we aren't dropping the wells of the residents nearby. That's very important. And we have been operating the system for over 20 years. We have the Cassidy wells are near us, and a few other ones. And they've seen no change in their quality, quantity, anything. And I think they were nervous at first, but I think we've proven that the system works and that we've tapped into a source that kind of has the ocean behind it. Something else to note, those upper wells, they kind of stay stagnant. You get rain, they go up. If you draw from them, they go down. Our wells show a 12-hour tide cycle. If you've ever seen a tide chart, it looks just like it. So it really has the ocean behind it. It's a really fascinating, and if you want to show and tell, I'll show you the graphs. They're pretty cool. We had a transducer in it during a hurricane, that one that kind of petered out, but we all got scared in August. And actually, we could see a little bit of a storm surge. It came way up, which was very interesting to us. But it follows the ocean very closely. So we like to think we have the ocean kind of behind us here. although it's not pure salt water either. So, but
Okay.
like I said, I can talk about water all
Okay.
day. So shut me up
We'll
if
save
you
that
want
for next
to and
month.
you want to move on. So,
All right.
but anyway, yeah. Thanks for that question. Yeah. Okay. I'll try not to answer it long-winded.
planning. Feel confident that this third. Well,
This expansion, this project. And no one has a crystal ball, it's hard to say. I would like to think that this sets you up for 20 years. It also depends on the rate of failing wells that are within the system. It depends on some rate of development. We've been through this with the town council some in our talks, and we have limited space. And we're doing this for 60 days, right? We don't need it now. And economics become very difficult. So at some point, which this might be it, you're not going to just keep on expanding water over and over again without investing 20, $30 million, a new facility, new lot, everything. So it's like, how far do you want to go eventually? And we spoke about this, we're kind of building out to our space right now. Are we building out for 50 years? No, we're kind of doing what we can. I feel like more than, because you can't put any more, there's not going to be another room available for another tank on this lot, unless we start purchasing other properties. The state was nice enough to purchase the well field for us, which was a windfall, for the ratepayers. I don't think we were going to afford another $1.3 million for 7 acres, So we're building out to what we have. That's the other thing. Source water is difficult too. You need big chunks of land for source water. So, does it set you up? Yeah, but I don't see us going much further than this. And sometimes, and I will say this, water resources are quite often a limiting factor to development on islands and all across the world. We're running out of space and we're doing what we can to get through. And then maybe in 10 years, we reevaluate that. But that's a huge undertaking that would require a new property and a completely new treatment facility. You'd have to just start over from scratch. Yeah. Which we're not doing here because, like I said, the economics don't work out. The economics aren't going to work out, and the ratepayers are going to be left with the bag, and it's going to be a disaster. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
Okay. Allison or Karen, do either of you have questions?
No.
Okay.
No, you have, just have to schedule it for next month.
I'll run through the waivers
Yeah.
and then schedule. So mostly, they have submitted material. They're asking for waivers for 11 and 12. Landscape plan, I don't see that they need it since they're already occupying the land. And the same thing, they're not involved in open space plan management, so that makes sense to me. And 13, it's the building models. I don't think we know what water tanks look like. I don't think we need a building model. So I would propose that we grant the free waivers. If anybody here has questions or comments.
Margie, one sec. Those
Sure.
might be the zoning, were those the zoning waivers?
Yep.
Versus
Right.
the DPR
Yeah, these are for the
application.
special, this is for the special use permit.
Yep, yep. So for the development plan review application,
Okay, I've got that one too.
there was just a couple not applicable,
Okay,
like what the applicant submitted, not applicable for emergency access, as it's already an existing developed property that has emergency access, and let's see.
Number
A
10.
commercial structure, it's a municipal structure, so there was just a couple not relevant components of the required application material that they're requesting waivers from.
yeah,
So
they really didn't request any waivers
Yeah.
on that.
Number 10. Well, it's not applicable. I
Yeah.
don't know. How you
Yeah,
guys
yeah,
wanna
that's
handle
what
that.
you said.
Yeah.
Commercial structure, so. So I think I've covered all the questions. So I'll make a motion that we grant the waivers for the development plan review and the special use permit.
Second?
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. And we will schedule you for a hearing for February 14th.
Okay.
Happy Valentine's Day.
All right, February 4th. I'm trying to work out with my legal counsel. I'm looking at his text messages
Okay,
here because he has to be here for that. He represents a number of other municipalities and has standing meetings. And of course, I said March.
well, we
But,
can, you know, we can.
Hold on, let me. Oh, all right, so do we have enough time between now and then to get all of our ducks in order with public notice and all that as well?
Public notice takes 3 weeks, if I recall
Okay, so-
correctly.
Okay,
So
Should
it's
be
possible. If you
5
feel-
weeks away.
Yeah,
yeah, okay, so we have time. I'm just making sure because I would love to do it on, he says bad March 13th. I think he has a standing meeting on the second week on Wednesdays, which is tough. I don't know. This was never going to go well after I spoke to him on the way here and I was like, yeah, this isn't going to go well. So first and thirds are good and second and fourths are bad Wednesdays for him. And I know, and I'm like,
and unfortunately, our schedule is
I know.
set up for the second
I-
Wednesday of each
I
month.
know, I
I
know.
was gonna say I could go to March 13th for you.
Well, the other option is, I mean, I don't think you let people, does this planning board let legal counsel attend remotely or not, is the next question. I
We
think
have in the past, but that was during COVID and I don't know what the rules
Okay.
are.
legal counsels are allowed to, from what I understand,
That's what I thought.
but it's been kind of not,
Karen, and does that sound right? That the legal counsel could do it by Zoom?
If the board so wishes, yes.
because he's fine. It's like he just can't get back on the
Yeah,
ferry
I-
and get to Warwick or something, you know.
He has an in-person meeting that evening, so if he could join by Zoom, like for the
Zoom.
4 o'clock, you're saying that would work?
Yeah, I would be comfortable with that because this project seems to be well on track and we've been talking about it for a number of months, weeks, whatever.
Yeah.
The
Years
rest of
from
you
me.
feel comfortable with that?
Sure.
Okay.
All right, then let's
appreciate that.
tentatively schedule this for the February 14th date with everybody. And talking with people, you find that does not work, then talk to Jen when she's
Okay.
back about maybe scheduling a special meeting.
Okay.
We have done special meetings for other people, so this is not anything unusual for us.
Okay.
So
All right. I appreciate that. I'm going on vacation that Saturday, so I would love to have this off my plate and one less thing I got to
Okay,
think
we'll
about.
have
So,
as far as the records are concerned, you're scheduled right now for February 14th.
okay, February 14th. I
Yeah.
think that sounds great. Yeah.
Okay,
All right. Thank
Thank
you
you very
guys.
much.
Thank you very much. And we'll see you then.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, you did a lot of work. Thank you. Okay, number 2. Amendment to the zoning ordinance, Article 4, Section 425, Article 5, Section 517. Discuss and act on a request to provide the town council with findings and a recommendation for an amendment to the zoning ordinance, Article 4, Section 425, and Article 5, Section 517. Application submitted by Christopher Warfel regarding the front yard setback for ground mounted solar systems and clarification that pool heating systems are not included in the ordinance. Amend the zoning ordinance regarding solar energy systems. Chris?
After the last meeting, I volunteered to.
I'm sorry, Chris, could you check if the mic is on?
I'm sorry.
There you
Yeah,
go. Good.
thank you. Chris Warfel, Block Island of Its Hollow. After the last meeting, or during the last meeting, I promised that I would give you some scenarios to show I guess I'll say the cause and effect of what I was trying to have changed in the ordinance. And not being a CAD guy, I did try to make some CAD drawings for you folks to show what would happen if you did make the changes that I'm requesting. So I think I did 4 scenarios. And basically, they're very similar in that they show the prohibition of anything in the front from the property line to the house as it currently is, and then with the modification that would be allowed past the front setback. And you can see that it does open up a lot of options to people to site systems. Sometimes that may not be the best option for them, quite frankly. Their land may be oriented so that you know, a side boundary or a rear boundary, a rear area is more productive for the system. But always felt that it was very difficult to have such a severe restriction on the front yard of a property, given that the front yard is so ill-defined because of how properties are here. So that is why I gave you these scenarios, to show the cause and effect. I didn't know if you had any questions on my bad CAD drawings.
Chris, can you just kind of show them? I don't know what Sosha says, she hasn't seen hers. I don't know whether anybody else did. It came out a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
I did not see these.
Oh, I sent them. I did send them.
I think that I saw something, but I'm not sure what I saw was what you're showing.
Yeah,
You may not have gotten these.
I sent them the next day or day after.
Yeah, I thought that something came out, well, 2 or 3 days after.
Okay, well, as you request. Here is, sorry to do it this way. Here is a property, this is the house. This is where the array might be sited. And this is the prohibition where you cannot be in front yard. There's a past mistake, that little rectangle should be also prohibited.
If I could just clarify, there wasn't a prohibition, it was a special use permit requirement, right?
Right.
But at the last meeting, there was a consensus of the board to remove that requirement for front setback, requiring a special use permit within the front setback area. So that language has been drafted and distributed.
So then this is what I proposed, and actually these are reversed. You should have white, you should be allowed to put it all the way from the setback to the house. So this is a property that is just configured, that has really not much impact on the ordinance as it was previously done in what I requested. So again, this is just one scenario. So this is, I'll just call it a nothing burger for today's discussion, and that there's really no consequence if you change the ordinance when this type of property. There's other ones that do have a greater effect, and I will show those next. This next one really does show what the proposed language would do. In this scenario, the front is here, and given the current language, you would not be able to put anything in. All right, this is current, so this is all no-go. Everything white is no-go. If you allow the languages that I requested, then from this green area is allowed to be used as a possible siting for a solar array.
Okay.
So once that idea gets in, you're going to see that everything I'm going to present right afterward, well, 2 more scenarios are very similar. Here it is where the front setback is here. So all the way from here to the house, not
Right.
allowed.
However, if you change the language, then.
Then it
that
would
is
be.
what it's about.
Mhm.
And one last,
It's not going to be any real difference.
this is so similar to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same.
Okay,
Yeah.
So again, the idea is that prohibition in the front setback, you know, there's a lot of area that becomes not prohibition, special use permit requirement, which I feel can be difficult and time consuming, expensive. You make these changes, people have much more latitude to put site these systems in a location that really, for many places on Block Island, I don't think solar systems are an affront to the bucolic beauty of Block Island. After I saw the overhead utility lines going in at next to the Hodge property, I felt that was much greater of a sensory affront than solar panels. So my purpose is to free up some space and options for people with a change in siting in the front setback.
okay.
That was a long-winded way, sorry.
All right, we have a draft in front of you from Allison. It does a couple of things. One, it makes very clear that the solar pool heating system is not part of the ground mounted solar system energy or solar canopy. And if you look on page afterwards, I think it's the whole section that's just on page 2 now. Solar systems, and it would be used for just heating pool water, and it could be a size that was 75% of the pool by right. Anything larger than that would have to have a special use permit. So
Yep.
does anybody have problems with that? We all seem to agree last time around, but this is your second opportunity to
Right.
say yes or no.
I'm still, oh, may I?
Yes, you may.
I'm still in support of these changes. I just want some clarification. I have 3 comments or questions. For example, first page under capital letter B, number 4, it talks about the landscaping design. Who oversees that when it's finished? Who approves the landscaping?
That's been in there for a lot of things, solar, not exclusive to solar, I don't think. And I don't know.
Because if you remove, which I support, if you remove the special use permit, I strongly feel that we need to protect the view shed for the neighbors. And I don't see any enforcement agency or anybody in charge of making sure that the arrays are properly.
Well, if it's
So,
done things other than the array, who enforces the other things?
if I could help answer that question.
Yeah,
So
please, Allison.
we're not eliminating any projects, all applicable projects for special use permit, just those within the front setback. So there's still that size limiting factor, right? That would trigger a special use permit. So these standards still would apply for systems of a certain size, and these are applications that go to the zoning board.
But if it does not require a special use permit, who is going to approve the final product?
There are projects now that are solar projects that are by right, that just they get a building permit.
So it's the building inspector who approves it?
Yeah, the land use office.
Land use office, I think.
And
all right.
But basically, Jen.
Yeah, so to the extent that it's an enforcement issue, you have staff that is charged with enforcing provisions of your ordinance. This would be one of those provisions. And if a potential violation came to the attention of staff, they would be able to investigate and issue any appropriate notice of violation.
Okay, so essentially somebody has to complain.
Yeah, which is the way
Okay.
it's done now.
Okay, just, okay.
That's
So
fine.
the other clarification I had, and here you have to excuse my ignorance, Chris. What is what is this solar system for a pool system look, how's that look different from a regular
Yeah.
solar
I
array?
will sketch it very quickly. They're high density polyethylene, which is basically durable plastic, sun resistant. And there is what's called a header and a return.
And is that next to the pool or over the pool?
They're next, they should be close to the pool for pumping purposes. You don't want long runs because it takes a lot of pumping energy then.
That's all I need to know.
But it looks like that.
Sure.
So here's your header. But there's many of these long, very thin tubes, like my finger.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is, you circulate this fast, or a large volume of water gets circulated. Every time it gets circulated, the pool gets circulated, the degree increases about 1 degree Fahrenheit.
I just want, and then my last question is on the third page at the very top, number 3. It talks about the solar pool heater system size and of the service area, and that it's exempt from the special use permit. But I'm also assuming that it's not exempt, and I have to ask you guys, it should not be exempt from standards, right? Correct? The standards listed on page 1.
I don't think so. I'm about to, that would have to go back to Allison.
For example, Allison, are you suggesting that the solar pool heater systems be screened as well as the regular ground mounted systems?
So that top section. All right, just checking, I'm not still on mute. Is specific to those projects that are a special use permit, section 425. But then below we have standards in the other section, section
Right?
517. So there's standards for ground mounted systems there
Are those,
and roof mounted. I mean, in some cases, these are roof mounted.
but are the standards that are listed there applicable to the pool heating systems?
I would say yes. They're listed here in that section. They're defined there in that section.
Okay,
So depending
okay.
on where they're placed.
Just wanted to make
And
sure
the
that,
size, that would determine the
all right.
standards.
Yeah, if it's over 75%, then they require a special use permit.
I think most of these systems are no taller than, I'll say, 6 inches off the ground. Because it is structurally difficult to place these elevated unless you put them on a roof. And that's not going to be a problem in this case. But a ground mounted solar pool heating system, they're almost always ground mounted and they lay almost flat on the ground.
Well, that's different from a regular ground mounted system, which is much higher. So
Yeah, this one, I've only seen
should
one
not-
once and it was only about this high off the ground.
then
And it was,
I'm sorry, Marty.
oh, let's go ahead.
It certainly could be
It-
5 feet off the ground, far away from
I would not want to be the person building that rack for that system because of how I drew this picture. They're not rigid, they're very flexible. And you would have to build such a strong structural base to hold that rigid. We did one, I have to say, the first one we did many years ago. And we never did another one like that because it just couldn't hold up. When there were high winds, it was, the thin tubes would be whipping around too much in the wind and they'd break. So
So just to say, they're not all on the ground.
Oh,
Elevated or
Mhm.
And away from the pool, but protect, in this case, it's protected individually, not in sight of the state road and the one. In this case, it's not, but just to say that it can.
It can be. And, personally, not really doing this anymore, but I would not want to, I would try very hard to talk the person out of that.
Could I just ask that you please try to use the mic?
Yep, I am. Hopefully, it's
I
on.
know for both our applicants and our members of the board. Thank you.
Mary, having trouble hearing you, Mary.
Sorry, I'll do that.
So I guess what I'm suggesting is that we give some guidelines regarding screening for the pool systems if they reach a certain height off the ground. Because it seems silly to screen something that is 6 inches above ground, but if it's 5 or 10 feet or 12 feet, that I think is a different story.
Yeah, I was just saying, Allison, Chris is saying most of them are low to the ground, but I do know of a few that are 4 or 5 feet above the ground. They are by the owner's desire, not an eyesore on the property, but it was just to say, Allison, that they can be off the ground, and I know of some that are.
Yeah, okay, and just for, we have
Well,
a
good.
maximum, the ordinance is a maximum of 10 feet in height, for ground mounted systems.
So we could have a parallel standard there.
Yeah.
Well, that
think
would
it's
apply.
covered.
And if it is, for example, I'll just pick a number, if it's higher than, say, 3 feet off the ground, it must be screened. Can that be added in? Because I thought most of them were all on the ground. I didn't realize that some could be higher. So something to think about.
Other than that, I have no concerns.
Okay.
Would that apply, Marty, to all systems though, not just,
I was talking about the pool system.
because right now there's nothing in our like standards for ground mounted that are by right. Versus in the SUP section, because those are larger size systems, they do, there is a standard on landscaping, so. That's why, we can certainly add it in for pool heater system.
Well, that's why I say add it in for the pool heater, because if it's on the ground, it's not a problem, but if it becomes 3 to 6 feet above the ground, then yes, I think it needs to be screened.
How does the rest
of the
team feel about that?
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
Makes sense.
it makes sense. If it's all on the ground, I don't think it needs to be screened. And I just said, I've only seen a few, but the ones I've seen have all been, 6 inches to a foot off the ground. And then looks like a long, narrow tube. So, I think that that could be mentioned in there.
Well, what are the height limits for, in SUP, what are the height limits for the ground mounted systems now?
10 feet.
And it couldn't be,
10 feet, I think.
okay, then if it can't be higher than 10 feet, and if it's between 3 and 10 feet, it has to be screened with appropriate vegetation.
I support that.
Would that be true? You have something language saying limiting visibility from public roadways. Is that when that would be implemented? Or would it be implemented for all systems, no matter where they're sited?
Where is that located?
Number 4 under B standards, number 4.
That we were talking specifically for either the solar array or the solar canopy.
Those are the larger size systems.
Yeah, the large systems.
Those are the size, they're 400 square feet or larger. That's the SUP standard. So what Margie's speaking to is
Right.
these pool heater systems are do not require a special use permit, and they're over 3 feet in height. She'd
I
like
see.
to see a standard for landscaping within those by right systems.
I understand. 425 is for the special use permit
Yes.
language. I'm sorry. Yeah, that makes more sense. Thank you.
And without that, I can't vote for it. I'm giving up my special use permit in order to work on this, so I have to keep this in there.
Yep.
Okay. Well, then my last question for the board is, are you comfortable giving up the special use permit on the front lawns? The setbacks will still apply depending on what zone it is. But you would be giving up, control over the, lawn between the house and whatever the setbacks are. So if you're comfortable with that, we could go ahead and vote on this.
I'm a little uncomfortable. I agree with what Chris says. You want to make solar as easy as you can for people. Can you hear me, Allison? I agree with what Chris is saying. You do want to make solar as easy to get, shall we say, for homeowners. But I'm still stuck on the why of giving up the special use permit. I understand the arguments here today and other times when we've met, when the special use permit is seen as a little bit of hindrance to the applicant. It costs more time and more money. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it. I think we have to do that in other cases where it also costs money and time. I'm just a little uncomfortable letting that go, unless there's a way we could let that go and feel like we are protecting other people who would feel a little let down in their neighborhood if they saw one in a front yard or lawn. Again, even though I feel we want to make solar as easy to use in any homeowner space. I just think we have an obligation to the neighborhood, and I don't know how to
So is
balance
there-
that.
Doesn't an
you know?
SUP kick in after a certain size though?
Yes,
Yeah.
it does.
All right, so
So
hypothetically,
is
we
that
have, if there were no, whatever you want to call it, clause for an SUP to kick in, it was a by right. And they still had to come in for an SUP regardless of the size. And we could take, let's just take, we'll use my property as an example.
Mm.
The front of my house faces the Thomas property. The side of my house faces Pilot Hill Road. One side of my house faces Campbell, one side, and I have no vegetation around it. By right, like what's this? Well, I guess my point is, and I should, just by virtue of sun direction, because the front of my house faces north, I'm not going to put it there because it's going to be shut. So I have to go to the south or towards the road or towards
southwest,
towards Jen Brady.
east, southeast?
I guess my point is, what's the purpose of the special use permit other than to say I need to do this, and you guys are going to hash out where I can put it?
No, we were talking primarily about a home that faced on a paved road. Not one like your or mine,
Let's
which
use Keith, he's here.
Yeah,
The
but
front of his house
it's not on a paved road.
faces a dirt road, regardless of paved or dirt. I'm saying it faces the front of his house faces a road.
A main
So
road.
I
But
mean,
we're-
like,
we're-
what is it?
Yeah.
Beacon Hill
We're,
Road?
Yeah,
Yeah.
whether it's paved.
Okay. So, but if the south side of my house faced a paved road like Pilot Hill, what would the difference be? Like, this is what I'm getting at. I don't understand what input can this board have on a solar panel or a solar array going on a piece of property other than possibly, all right, the neighbor's gonna get pissed off. Well, this is the only place I can put it because this is the best, most efficient place to put it. We're gonna say no? Like, I'm trying to wrap my head around. I could understand if it goes beyond a certain by right. I get that. But I can't get just because. It doesn't make sense. It's like we all have by right things. Like, we could do things by right. I don't understand having a special use permit just because what are we going to affect in a lot of these I think the homeowners would, like, I certainly wouldn't want to put an array that stands 10 feet off the ground in my backyard. So Bethany has to look at it. I certainly wouldn't want to put one or Jen has to look at it,
Hmm.
or, you know, so
Right.
where is it? It's on my roof.
Right.
So that would be the only suggestion that we could make, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I think some of the early confusion was created by the term the front of your house.
Well, that was,
That-
and that
that-
was the bulk of the discussion.
Yeah, then we tried to define front of the house
Right.
on a paved road or,
Right.
you know,
So I understand.
state or
that.
town road. So that's how we,
I mean, there's some houses are accessed from
Yeah.
the back of the house, right?
okay, but say, use another example. Somebody wants to put one on, who lives on High Street and has his house is set back on High Street, and he would have space between the setback and his home to put a solar array. And he's on a main street, and I'm not sure how that would look. I would think the neighbors might be very upset about that.
But it's screened.
If it's screened, that's one of
Well,
the
that's
things.
already in there.
That's why I'm saying I could not vote for this if that doesn't stay in there.
Oh, no, we're not arguing that.
No, we're
I'm more questioning, like, I understand what
Special
Mary's
use.
saying. like,
And I
why
did
give
too,
up
because
the SUP?
I've been the one right along who does
I
not
think
want
the
it.
SUP should kick in after a certain size, for sure.
Period.
That's
I don't think,
my
I don't think anybody has any
Yeah.
disagreement on that.
I just don't want a SUP for the sake of an SUP. Like, that's because there's certain circumstances, particularly when it comes to, we're not talking about like a pool house, like or, you know, something where there might be some movement, like there might be like people might have a piece of property that like, this is where it's gotta go for it to actually work. And if it's screened, right? You can't
But the
see it.
screening standard is within the special use permit
Mhm.
section, so those standards, so the purpose of the special use permit is to review projects. They have additional level of review, those standards that are listed there, you need to make sure that the project meets those standards. So if it's not gonna go before a special use permit, those standards are not relevant and are not going to be applied.
Weren't we just discussing?
There's
though,
no
having-
screening.
Weren't we discussing
Yeah.
adding the screening in?
Well, that's why I was asking the question about, we're talking about pool heater systems, that's what Marty was speaking of.
Right.
So if there's a
Yeah.
less than 400 square foot, less than 400 square feet solar array, I don't see where the standard is, ground mounted system standard requiring landscaping. It's just by right, you're gonna go to the building department. Unless you wanted to add that, but that's not,
And then Sosha's question is if there was, who's to enforce that, if there was screening?
Right.
Yeah, see, I mean, I'm not opposed to adding in screening to any, as yeah, it's by right, but you have to screen it. That's,
Okay, perhaps that we can add that in there.
that's fine.
We could start with that. And furthermore, maybe I'm a little bit too optimistic, but I think that time will tell if this ordinance is going to backfire or not, and then we can change it again. Something akin to the concept of a sunset clause. You know, let's see how it works.
I would say, and the majority of projects are going on roofs, that's what solar installers are.
Yeah,
picking. There's
right.
very few ground mounted systems.
Then perhaps so we could do a paragraph that says that we would prefer a roof mounted system, but if it becomes absolutely necessary to install a ground mounted system in the front yard, that they be appropriately screened and to use the minimum amount of size necessary, something to that effect. Would that work?
Allison.
That language could become very difficult to enforce.
Yeah.
I agree.
It's, so then we go back to leaving the special use permit in.
And just to throw another, fly in this ointment,
Wonderful.
I know, with the new state law changes that you're taking up as the next item, special use permit criteria all have to be specific and objective. So just keep that in mind whenever you're crafting criteria to approve a special use permit. Under the new state laws, they have to be specific and objective. They cannot be speculative or general or broad.
So why can't we, without a special use permit, require screening? What's the hang up there?
That's specific.
You can, and that, as long as you're outside the
Well,
confines
that's what
of special
Margie
use
is.
permit, what I just said does not apply. If you
Okay.
want to say that screening is required for anything above 3 feet, yeah, you can say that. I think the question became how to limit the size of a system in a front yard without necessarily requiring the special use permit.
I see. So
Mhm.
I think we'll just go straight for screening, period, and drop the preference for the roof.
Yeah,
roof
we can do
mounted
that.
Systems, just say if you have a solar array, you must screen it.
A ground mounted solar energy system or solar array must be screened if it is placed in the front yard.
No, then you're creating the original problem again. Because what's the front yard
Well,
visually is not. the front
Okay, then
yard.
we can say it
So-
has to be screened and no matter where it is placed.
What I'm hearing is two different options. One is anything above 3 feet has to be screened. The other
Right.
option I'm hearing is that anything in the front yard has to be
Yeah,
screened.
yeah, I don't do the front yard.
Okay.
business.
Fine, I'll drop the front yard and we'll do anything higher than 3 feet, 3 to 10 feet has to be screened. That's,
So the team, we have to ask the team, how high what do you want the minimum or the maximum height to be?
well, that's already in there. It's 10 feet.
Yeah, for
For
screening.
the landscaping.
Yeah, for the
screening.
landscaping was 10 feet, if I
Mhm.
recall correctly. Okay. So does that suit everybody?
10, installing landscaping 10 feet high? The 10 feet was in regard to the solar system,
Yeah.
the solar
Yes.
energy system.
So if it's going to cover the solar system, it should be the same height as the solar system.
You mean the pool system?
Well, there's two different things here. One is the pool system. And we've already taken care of that. If it's under 3 feet, it doesn't require screening. Now, if you're talking about a ground mounted solar energy system or a solar canopy, then we'd say it has to be screened up to whatever the height of it is. And I forget whether it's 12 feet or 10 feet. It's in here somewhere.
Whatever the height
It's
is.
10 feet.
It's 10 feet.
It's 10 feet,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
you're really creating, I think, a quagmire here in that the screening is for what purpose? It's to shield the visual impact of the technology from an abutter, I think, or from
That's right.
someone driving. And that's assuming, and then this has been the problem all along, that this is an offensive technology or could be an offensive technology. And we had one example where the neighbors encouraged it and it still got shot down. They didn't want screening. They didn't ask for any of that. So I understand the visual impact, and I think you have it in there for systems over a certain size. I think that is definitely appropriate. But just remember what that screening is going to be. That of itself is going to be another visual impact. So I don't think that necessarily is a good idea.
Could I make a suggestion? Possibly use the language that's already under B4 for your special use permit. Landscape and screening, that would read something to the effect of any system greater than 3 feet in height requires landscaping and design elements to visually screen the SES from public roadways and abutting properties.
Fine,
Fine.
Sold.
Yeah.
fine.
Going once?
Thank you. Okay. I'll make a motion that we approve the solar energy changes that are written and changed tonight. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries.
So just
Thank
to
you.
kind of, this is again, Chris Warfel's application. So this is some language that the planning board has, you know, recommending.
Recommended to the
so
town council.
Unless Chris, I mean, maybe Karen weighing in here, but like Chris still has his language and his application. So if the planning board comes forward with different language, you know, what is the town council going to advertise? Like, unless Chris agrees with this language and wants to amend his application.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think ahead. What are we going to be advertising?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways to do it. Obviously, the most efficient is to go to the council with one version that, you know, with the hope that there's a positive recommendation from planning. That, if we want to do that, Mr. Warfel is going to have to agree to the version that has just been discussed, and, you know, at least verbally consented to by the board, including that landscaping language. If that is not the case, I've seen it where two different versions go before the council. That gets a little bit trickier, but it's possible. My recommendation is if you can come to agreement on what is going to the council, let's do that. If Mr. Warfel wishes to make an additional presentation or request additional changes, there will be an opportunity to do that when this matter goes before the council for hearing.
I would like to resubmit, I guess, if this works, if you think this works, adopting the language that Allison Ring and the planning board has adopted tonight with the suggestion that you had about, I don't know if it's clarifying the screening issue.
Mm-hmm.
And as Sosha said, you know, it's a start. Like 2 years ago, we started and we're back again, and somebody else can take it up the next time. But, you know, this is a process. So I'm all for just moving this forward, as I just stated I would.
So then we will do just this one version to go to the town council. That's what Chris is saying. And we will see how it works. We may be back 2 years from now, tweaking it, but I think this is a pretty good version at this point for to meet everybody's needs. Thank you very much, Chris. I appreciate your patience. Right.
You do too?
Yes. Okay, number
Madam-
3.
Madam Chair, did I miss a vote to send a positive recommendation? I apologize if I did.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question.
Was
Oh,
there-
yes, we did.
was there a
Everybody
vote?
voted affirmative.
I apologize, I missed it.
Karen, did we
I think we did. I see Ashley's up.
we lost?
I'm still here, but I don't think we're in the meeting anymore.
We just got voted. It just said Karen is now the host, so I don't know.
I think we got kicked out.
Oh my gosh. All right. I guess we'll try to.
Should we try rejoining?
Yeah, I guess we'll try rejoining. Okay.
That's a good-
Or
All right.
should,